Welcome. My name is Ernest. We're going to be going over some of the spiritual issues, some of the physical issues, which there are physical things to being online a lot. We're going to be looking at the mental, and as we go through this, we'll look at some ways of controlling, monitoring. I guess you would say I am a media junkie, and I would not even say I'm a recovering one. I am one in process. My wife oftentimes will tell me to close my laptop and come back to the real world. I got a master's degree online. And while I was doing my master's degree, everything was online, so I worked my normal job. I'd come home at night, get on the laptop, which I work IT, so I do networking and computers all the time. And when I'm at home, I was writing my papers on the laptop. It was actually a friend of mine was a missionary in Hong Kong. And her husband was working there at the Adventist school, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and she would grammatically correct all my papers, which was great. I'd work on my papers till late at night, send them off to her, which, with the time zone, I'd go to sleep. I'd wake up the next morning at 4 or 5 in the morning. She's got them all done and sent back to me, and then I would get there and turn in my papers for grad school. But that meant I was staying sometimes on the computer till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, hitting it again at 5 o'clock in the morning, to make sure I got it submitted by the 8 o'clock deadline, looking at it, looking at the revisions and stuff. Once I got done with my master's program, I had to sit there and say, okay, I don't need to be online all the time. And my wife had to say, you've got a little girl, it's time to stop. And we basically set down some ground rules. So as we go through this, there have been over 100 cases. A friend of mine who does some research, over 100 cases where Facebook has caused a split in a marriage just with one man doing a research, where he sent out a poll. And from his one poll, from people that he knew on Facebook, he got over 100 responses where they said, yeah, Facebook probably has something to do with the marriage splitting. So as we go through this, you need to realize, with my phone, I can be on Facebook. So it's not even, I don't even have to have my computer open. I can see the updates and all the postings and status and Twitter updates from my phone. One of the big issues with this, a lot of times people think it's really technical and really complicated, and it's not. You'll notice here I've got communicate, monitor, and report. Brian here works for me at GCA. He's one of my computer geeks. And at GCA, we have several levels of filtering and monitoring. Well, all the young people who work for me have another layer. I trust, but I verify. I get screenshots emailed to me of what they're doing on their laptops. So while, yes, I trust what they're doing, I also verify what they're doing. And that's part of the monitoring. I hope and pray you never have to come down to the report side, where you actually have to get police involved. I've worked with missing people before, some young ladies through the Adventist church because of some of the work I've done. That's not fun when you get into that part of the life at all. And I hope you never have to go there. But basically, good parenting hasn't changed. Being a good teacher hasn't changed from what it was in the past. Communication, monitoring, having the real face-to-face communication. One of the questions that was asked here a little bit ago, am I going to look at just PCs or am I going to look at Macs? I'm looking at Macs and PCs when I'm talking about this. Number one, antivirus software. That is very important, not just for PCs. As I was explaining earlier, this last couple weeks there was over 60,000 Macintosh machines infected with a worm, with a virus, basically. And everyone used to say, well, if I've got a Mac, I'm safe. They're better designed. No, they're not better designed. They were just flying under the radar because they didn't have enough market share to be worth the hackers' time. They have return on investment. They're trying to turn a profit. Hackers aren't doing it. Most of them aren't doing it for fun. They're doing it for money. They're going to go after the biggest bang with the least amount of work. Well, that's Microsoft. Well, now there's enough out there with Apple that they can go after Apple, and that's why 60,000 machines within a couple weeks were infected with the virus, and the number is continuing to grow on this worm. So if you have a Macintosh machine, you need to make sure you got your antivirus software. You need to have some type of filtering. And along with the filtering, then you probably want monitoring. All Filter does is says, I block this type of software. Oh, I don't want them to go to these websites. My daughter is, let me make sure I'm right, 7 years old. And when she's on the computer, I'm very careful which website she goes to. She's got a laptop, a little mini netbook. She can get on it in her bedroom, but she has no internet in her bedroom. The only time she has internet, and because I'm the person in charge of the computer and I can lock it down, it's a very locked down computer. The only time she has internet is where she's sitting in the living room, or she's sitting in my office, which is right next to the kitchen, and my wife and I can see exactly what she's doing, and only at approved times. And we're actually very picky where we let her go online. PBS Kids, I love some of the stuff on there. But you also need to look at what is their message. It is a very secular message. It is a very evolutionary message. It is a very godless message. If that's what you want for your children, that's your choice. But for me, as we sat there and said, okay, you're allowed on this station on PBS, and I sit down and I spend time with my daughter and watch the shows. Well, what are they talking about here? And I actually ask her questions. Does that sound like they're trying to tell you, they're saying evolution. Do we know if that's right or wrong? No, that's wrong. Okay, why? And if you don't, they're getting this preached to them through this. The other thing is parental, like as I was basically demonstrating here, parental supervision. That hasn't changed. Do I have any teachers in the room? Okay, teachers, my condolences and my prayers. My wife is a teacher. She teaches math at Georgia-Cumberland Academy. And I actually went through education department at Union College. I came out as a teacher. I actually started out as Theo. I started as a theology major. Then I always like to say I got saved and went into IT. And then from there, I actually education in IT, and I've now been more on the IT side. So I do understand the education. We are going to talk about some stuff specifically for teachers today. For example, you give me a cell phone, I can get any answer to any question you want texted without you seeing it underneath the desk. It's called KGB. And it's not Russia. But everything from calculus down to second grade math. One of the things you need to do is make sure that you have set up a set of rules, whether it's in your classroom, whether it's in your home, whether it's between just a spouse and a wife. Internet addiction rates. I will tell you that most people, and there's been several studies done, the highest number of people who have internet addiction are the teenagers and the empty nesters. Once the children are out of the house, all of a sudden you've got this time with your spouse and a bunch of other time. I now have 2 children. I have a little boy who's 7 months old and love him to death. Never thought I'd be 40 and have a little boy, but we are blessed and very excited. But let me tell you, it takes a lot of time. I can't imagine the amount of time that I used to think I didn't have before I had 2. And I know that once the children leave the house, I'm going to have a lot of time to myself. And that's one of the areas where internet addiction happens, is because once the children are out, then you're sitting here with, what am I going to do with my time? What am I going to do with my life? So this is one of the areas that you need to set some rules between you and your spouse, your family, and even for yourself spiritually. At Union College, we had a professor in the English department, Dr. Ham, who would always talk about that every hour she spent reading secular literature, and she taught literature, she would always spend 2 hours reading the Bible. She said it takes that long to detox after Shakespeare. And I'm not disputing, and I think you look at what's on the internet, and there's good on the internet, but there's also a bunch of other junk. So same thing with the media. And I'm not talking about, when I'm talking media, we're going to pretty soon here be talking about media across the board, not just inappropriate media. I'm talking 3ABN, Hope Channel, all these things. The amount of time you spend on media still has an impact on you. One of the things you want to do, one of the best things you can do is sit down with a young person and you'll be amazed. Ask them what's their favorite thing to do online. Have them show you what they think is the coolest YouTube video out right now. And my worker, Brian, sitting here looking at me going, I'm not sure I want to show my parents that one. One of the things we do at GCA, we have 4 levels of internet filters. With those 4 levels, I still get email alerts when certain words are used. We monitor email, we monitor their internet. Like I said, 4 levels of internet filtering, let alone the emails. And sometimes you'll find young people that'll be up front, they'll be singing praises to the Lord, and you're saying, wow, they've really got it all put together. And then you see one of their emails come through with several words that you would not want to repeat it to anyone. And Pastor Don Keel talks about it's the underground society of youth today. It's very compartmentalized, and they have two different cultures, and they don't think anything about it. A lot of us as adults do it, we just hide it better. But the young people don't, it's just out there. One of the ways, and one of the areas where it's out there, honestly, is in their media consumption, which a lot of time is an online consumption. Read their emails, talk to them about their emails. Have them email you. You might be surprised how the language changes, how they change. Look at their Facebook postings. And Facebook is not something that's left for 13 and higher like you're supposed to be. When I've gone around to elementary schools and I've done presentations clear down to second grade, and I ask, how many of you have a Facebook account? 3/4 of the second graders are raising their hand that they have a Facebook account, whether mommy and daddy know it or not. So these are some things to think about. The golden rules that I say, and these have been researched out, that should be taught to our young people. First of all, real life is the same, whether it's online or whether it's not online. Courtesy, respect, modesty, these same rules need to be applied to online versus offline, even more so. Don't talk, text, or multimedia, or send emails, or I can sit here and text you a photo or a video, and we're going to show you some of this why in a little bit. Keep personal information private. As soon as I linked my Facebook with my Android phone, I had a whole bunch of people I went to academy with, I've got all their cell phone numbers now. And I'm sitting there going, wow, you really put your number in there? My Facebook profile, it's really kind of fun. If you go there and you're on my Facebook profile, you can wish me happy birthday when it says my birthday is. It's the wrong month, wrong day. I don't put my real birthday. Yes, there's a phone number there. No, it's not my real phone number. I don't know who they're calling. I really don't care. But it's not mine. So because I want to make sure that information, even if I got all the security settings set right on Facebook, which we're going to go over a little bit how to do that, there are still ways to get into it. Very easily, actually. Yes, ma'am? Her question was, once I put a profile on Facebook, can I ever take it off? The answer is no. Even if you ask them to delete it, even if you ask them to take the profile off, on the internet there's something called the World Wide Web Archive. So anything you put on the internet is automatically there forever. It's archived, usually across multiple different sites. You might not find it with a Google or Yahoo or some other search engine, but there's database search engines which you can use and actually go in and find this stuff. And that's my next point. Anything you put on the internet is not private, and it never goes away. So it lasts forever. One of the things you might be surprised, if you lived in Georgia, depending upon your county, and you own a home, sometimes they've got your name, your address, your social security, depending upon the city and county, all tied in right there on the database on who owns that house. Some of them have a copy of the deed, depending upon the county and state. So this information is easily out there. So these are things that you can call, ask, have them take it off, and do a search for yourself. And we'll go over a little bit how to do that.
They will take it off whatever you tell them if you ask them?
They will, and you'll get past some of the low-level people. But like we talked about before, even if it's been off, there is ways to find it if it's ever been on the internet. One of the things also to teach young people is if they come across something uncomfortable, to communicate. As parents, as teacher, oftentimes our first response is to come down and say, oh, you saw this horrible thing. No internet for so many weeks or so many months. All you're going to do is shove the young people to the underground society. Honestly. Now, if they've got a problem, you need to deal with the problem. But at the same time, if they just come across something accidentally, then we need to sit there and say, thank you for telling me. Let's get out of this. Let's get this closed down. Let's see if we can solve the problem and try and keep you from going there again or having you accidentally go there. Let's look at some of the influence on media. I have this linked on my website. There's a great document that was done this last year where they've actually studied the impact of media on young people. And this is done starting clear down from ages of 8 to 10-year-old. It was the youngest they went with this study. Look at the amount of TV content that they're spending. And this is the average amount spent in a typical day. Look at the number of hours.
In a 24-hour.
So our 8 to 10-year-olds, and let me highlight right here, on the TV content, it's basically our 11 to 14-year-olds are averaging 5 hours of TV a day. Now, if we were talking earlier about detoxing, because you've gone online and you've seen stuff and now you realize you need to get some spiritual food back in you, well, that means these young people should spend about 10 hours in the Bible to recover from what they were spending and doing online. I've met some 11 to 14-year-olds that might spend 10 minutes, but not too many, let alone 10 hours. So this is one of the things where it has a huge impact on them. Another area is music. Now here you're seeing the 15 to 18-year-olds are spending a lot more time on the music, which is typical. And then video games, they're all spending about an hour or so. But then when you get to total media exposure, look at the number of hours. You're looking between 8 to 10-year-olds are having 7 to 8 hours a day on average. And we're going to get into why this is so important. Versus your 11 to 14-year-olds are averaging almost 12 hours. Now that's total media exposure. That's different than what you're going to see as total media use, because sometimes I might be sitting here as a high school student or a young student or even an adult. I might be playing a video game, but I've also got my headphones on. So my total media exposure is higher because I'm doing multitasking while I'm doing my media stuff. So, and even as adults, sometimes we'll have the radio on or something else on, and then we'll be doing, have a couple things going at once. My workers always joke because it's not uncommon they'll come in my office. I'm on at least one phone. Sometimes I'm on 2 phones going like this. And there's music in the background and there's other things going on. That's just kind of the way computers run and the different requests that are coming in. I'm on my cell phone and on my phone. That happens more times than I care to think. But that's another form of media multitasking. 75% of young people have a handheld device that can go online. Now, one of the big things that they've always said for young people as far as internet safety is that this internet computer should be somewhere centrally located in the house where the parents can have an idea. Now, and as parents, oftentimes you'll put filters on your phones or on your computers, but a lot of phones don't have filters. So basically you're giving the child an unfiltered internet device which can go anywhere. And if you have an iPhone, about a month and a half ago, iPhone just released the Playboy app for 99 cents. Just to give you an idea. They before used to say they would only have kid-friendly content. Well, they no longer can say that. So that's something that a child can get installed on their phone and they can, whatever. So this is part of what's all involved in this. There are some really interesting statistics here that I want to talk about. There was a longitudinal study that was done for people about my age and just a little bit younger, that when they were kids, how many hours of media exposure did they have? If they had 5 hours of media exposure or more a day, they had a higher percentage of being depressed as 30-year-old adults. What was the average kid media exposure? Do you remember? About 11, 12 hours. Every hour over 5 hours almost doubled to tripled to sometimes quadrupled the likelihood of them having depression as an adult. Clinical depression. So if young people are exposed to this much media, then the likelihood of having depression as an adult is significantly increased. But let's look at some of these statistics. What they did is they divided people into 3 categories. They asked the person, have you had a lot of media exposure? Do you spend a lot of time online? Do you just spend kind of an average amount of time? They had them break down in these categories. Then they asked them questions from here. So you've basically got 3 categories. Right here are the kids who said they had heavy media exposure. Then you've got the moderate in the middle, and then people who said they didn't use media very much. Okay? Let's look at their answers. The kids that said that are light users, 66% said they had good grades, A's or B's. Whereas only 51% of the kids who were heavy users said, yeah, I've got good grades. I've got A's, B's, what I classify as good grades. Now remember, this is a little bit interpretive because it's whatever the kid calls good grades. I have failing poor grades, which is below a C. 47% of the kids who said they were heavy users said, yes, I've got failing grades, below C's. Versus only 23% of the people who weren't using a whole lot of media said, yeah, I'm really not doing well in school. Huge difference here. But let's come down to some other things I thought were even more insightful. Have a lot of friends. 93% of the people who were online a lot said, yes, I've got a lot of friends. But look at the moderate and even the light users. They're 91%. That could be a statistical, plus or minus. But one of the things that they have found is the people who were light users typically had more in-depth friendships because they were real friendships, face-to-face communication. But then if you go down, get along well with parents. The heavy users, 84% of them said, yeah, I get along. Look at the kids who don't use media very much. 90% of them said, yeah, I get along well with my parents. A big difference. One of the things that they didn't do in the study, which I would have liked to have seen them do with the heavy users, was have their parents take away their media and see if they still got along well with their parents. I think I could answer that question. I'm getting along well with my parents because when I'm going out to eat, I've got my headphones on. I'm not even paying attention to my parents. I mean, I've gone to restaurants and seen kids and parents sitting down together. The kids are in one world, and the parents are just talking to each other like the kids aren't there. Now let's take a look at, I've been happy at school this year. 72% of the kids who said they were heavy users said, yeah, I've been happy. So that's higher than about 50%. But look at versus the light users. 82% of the people who hardly use media said, yeah, this has been a good school year. That's a pretty big difference. But often bored was the one that really surprised me. The heavy media users are much more likely to say they're bored with life than the kids who are unplugged and are doing real things. Really interesting statistic. And then you come down to get into trouble a lot. Yeah, you can basically double that if you're a heavy media user versus a light media user. So, and these are what students are saying of themselves. This isn't people, doing a pool and making, these are what the kids are saying of themselves. And look at the often unhappy, the heavy media users, the kids that are enjoying their games, their PlayStations, their Xbox, they're much more unhappy as a group than the people who are unplugged. This really adds some interesting thought for what it's doing to our young people. And by the way, it's not just the young people this impacts. As I talked about earlier, they have found that people who have high media exposure have a much more likelihood of having depression as adults. One of the things they have found is that media exposure, most media exposure, increases the likelihood of aggressive, violent behavior. And I'm not talking about just because people are playing first-person shooter games. I'm just talking about what's on the news. And also it's much more depressed. I mean, the tornadoes have gone through, and yes, it's a horrible thing, but what are you hearing? Nothing but even more tornadoes that happened in Missouri. I mean, you turn on the news and it's, oh, Lord, okay, let's go home. Let's go to heaven, let's be done with this. Which isn't all bad, but at the same time, there's no hope. Because the media, for the most part, is godless. And that's something that has a big impact on our young people. And on ourselves. This is where I was going to talk about with teachers and parents so you understand cheating has become very easy. I can go on my cell phone and text KGB, KGB. You turn those letters into numbers, and I can text questions from second grade math all the way through AP calculus. And if you go to kgbanswers.com, you can see the current questions that are happening. You can see what people are, and people are responding back with the answers. So if I sit here with my cell phone down underneath the table, I can be texting. This is one of the things where I guess you could say I'm a real zealous preacher to our teachers at GCA, saying, as a teacher, you need to get out from the front of the classroom and you need to be walking and you need to be in the back of the classroom seeing what the kids are doing, even during a written exam, because you have no idea what's happening under the desk with the cell phone. It's so easy. And if we allow our students to cheat very easily, what are we reinforcing in our young people as far as the values? I think this is something we really need to think about. And right here's the link. At the end of this PowerPoint, I've got tons of reference slides that we won't go through, or we'll all be asleep. But you can go see where all this statistical data is pulled from. I have everything referenced in here, so that way if you've got questions, you can go through. And you can always email me too. One of the things, like I talked about before, Facebook, I can access Facebook from my cell phone very easily. And because I can access Facebook, it's amazing how many kids, and this was from a young person's profile, as you can tell, this young person has 579 friends. I don't know of too many young people that actually know 579 people well enough to classify them as friends. But one of the things that's kind of unique about Facebook is you get a friend of a friend and they start connecting and start connecting and start connecting, and all of a sudden you have no idea who the person you're actually talking to. Sometimes it can be fun. There's a couple of my friends on Facebook, we like to get into some rather fun discussions theologically. And we'll get stuff posted. And some of the people, I know one of the persons that does a lot of posting is an agnostic Jewish person. It's really fun to read his post. I don't know how in the world he got associated through one of my friends, but I really enjoy his insights. I'm hoping someday he comes to know the Lord as a Savior, but it's just because of a friend of a friend of a friend where this has gone down through, and so now I'm getting people posting back on things that I'm posting on, and it's really interesting reading discussions, but I really don't know these people. Who knows who they could be?
The term friends has a different meaning.
Yes, the term friends has a different meaning. My wife and I joke about that. My definition of friend is if the person dies tomorrow and if it significantly impacts my life, then they're a friend. If they don't, then they probably weren't much of a friend. They were just someone that I was aware of. So, one of the things about contacts in the social, it's very easy to find and get friend requests from people you don't know and you just click yes, okay. One of the things I will admit to what I did when I was in academy at Campion a long time ago, according to the high school kids back when Noah just got off the ark. But when I was at Campion, we would get out the little mug book, and of course we'd rate the girls. Which ones were pretty, which ones, had the ugly tree fall on them, or the whole ugly forest. And I'm sure the girls were doing the same to the boys. Ha ha, funny, funny, we laugh and joke about it. Facebook has changed this dynamic. And right here's the link to the LA Times in 2011. A young man did it on Facebook where he ranked the girls at his school and went to jail for it because it was classified as bullying and cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is basically where you're using some type of media where you're going and saying bad things and you're hurting people's opinions and other people, it adds on more and more. And several young people have actually committed suicide because they've been cyberbullied. Many, many cases, unfortunately. Well, now our young people need to realize that when they're saying things, there's a lot of silly things I did in my high school academy years that I'm really glad as I get older, my friends say, you remember when you did that? I didn't do that. Your memory's bad. I can say that because there's no digital photos. There's no Facebook postings. There's no MySpace post about or blog on what I did. Our young people aren't growing up that way. They've got a paper trail going back to everything they've done, which I'm so glad I don't have. Because I made a lot of silly decisions when I was a teenager, being a typical teenager. Let's talk about some of the risky behaviors. Basically, sending provocative images. And we're going to get into what's called sexting, which is sex texting. in just a minute. The numbers are very scary of how many kids actually get messages that are inappropriate or send them. But they don't even think about it. One girl in Virginia sent out a picture, and it hit the public school. She sent it to her boyfriend, and he sent it to a friend, and it got within the county within just like 3 days. She couldn't go anywhere where someone hadn't seen a picture of her that she wished she'd never sent. And that's part of with the mobile technology, you can send pictures so fast. It's great. My parents, I grew up in the Denver area. My parents, I always like to say, lost their mind and moved to Idaho, probably because my sister moved there. But anyways, right now, I love it that I can sit here and take a picture with my cell phone of their granddaughter and send a picture to them, straight to their email. They love it, or I can send it to their phone. Well, that's a neat thing of the technology. The other side is what the young people are doing or what could be done. Also, sharing passwords. My daughter knows very well when Grandma and Grandpa came out last year, she wouldn't share her password to her computer. But he's like, I want to get on and check my email. She's like, okay. So she logged on. She wouldn't tell him his password. She logged on and she walked away. And Grandpa was giving me a hard time saying, well, she won't share her password, but she logs on and walks away while I'm on her account. I said, well, I think she trusts you. But she still knows, even though she trusts Grandma and Grandpa, she doesn't share passwords. Not because we don't trust them or anything like that, but I want her to get that ingrained so when her friends ask, her first response is no. I don't share passwords I don't share it with my grandparents. Why would I share it with you? Because what happens is once you know the person's password, then you can get into their digital life and do all kinds of things. Other thing is embarrassing or harassing people. Like I explained before, one young man was arrested. The other thing is posting personal information. You would be amazed. I was doing some consulting for one of our academies where they wanted me to see what I could find out about their students and stuff. And I called up their principal and said, hey, this student here, you need to tell her to take off her Facebook profile. She was talking about the fact that she was closing Subway that next night by herself. And she even had the Subway geotagged, so if somebody was a robber or somebody wanted to come steal the money, she was going to be the only young girl in there closing down. It was all posted on her Facebook, which was an open profile. So I was like, tell her to take that off. And she probably ought to have someone there just to be safe. I mean, it was a small town. I wouldn't expect much trouble. But that's just one of the things that young people don't think about sometimes. And then clicking on pop-ups. Right now, I'm in the process of formatting my wife's laptop because she went to a very bad site. And I gave her a really hard time about going to these bad picture sites. She went in Google, and she typed our little girl's homeschooling. And she typed in on Google, she typed Last Supper coloring pages. And she clicked on one of the coloring pages that came up in Google Images. Well, it automatically had a virus with it. And she clicked on the virus thinking she was closing the box. It was actually installing the virus on her laptop. So I had to get her data files, clean them, and I'm in the process of reformatting her laptop. So whenever there's pop-ups, I always say you pull the power cord. So the other thing you can do is you can go in and clear out your internet history, so that way that's wiped out also. Again, as I mentioned before, if you put it on the internet, it's not private. Nothing on the internet is private. You can make it more private by setting your Facebook settings. I don't do groups. I don't do join causes. Yes, I want to support causes. I have another Facebook account for the Cancer Society, for Glacier View Ranch. I worked at Glacier View Ranch for 9 summers. I love it. I just absolutely love the place. Well, I don't do that with my regular Facebook profile where I've got pictures of my family, my children. I don't join any of those causes because that opens up my Facebook profile more and lowers my security. So these are some of the things you want to look at. Underneath the profile settings, you can go down. I've set it so only if you're a friend can you see any of my stuff. And some stuff I've blocked altogether. Yes, I have a bogus cell phone number or telephone number in my number area. But I still only put that's available to nobody. Because, I don't want someone else getting prank calls because of me. But at the same time, I've, made it while I realize when a number's in there, somebody can find it, even when I say it's private. So that's something you need to consider. A guy in Australia got in trouble for that this last week. He was doing a demonstration. Now we're going to look at more some of the mobile technologies. Basically, all of the media exposure, all of the security issues have gotten more accented because of what's happened with the mobile technologies. Right here is an article for those of you. If you have a smartphone, I don't know if any of you have played this game. It's a bit addicting. It's called Angry Birds. I love it. You're sitting there flinging birds against things and having them knock down these other things. Here's an article where basically someone in a step-by-step code, how to write the hacking code, to basically take Angry Birds and make it so you can install software on someone's phone when they go download the Angry Birds software. You guys have heard of Mythbusters from Discovery? I think they do some really cool, fun things. Don't always agree, of course, with their philosophy. But Adam Savage, who's one of the big stars, he got up in the morning, he took his cell phone, he took a picture of his car, and he said, off to work. And by the way, this PowerPoint slide I am pulling directly from the DoD, Department of Defense. They were doing this for training for their people, trying to help them to realize how bad this is. Every time you take a cell phone picture, guess what? Almost all of the smartphones have geolocators built into and it puts it in the back of the picture. It's a hidden part of the file called metadata. I'm going to show you and demonstrate an example here pretty soon. I'm going to show you how to find it out. And with this metadata, it automatically put the longitude and latitude of where his car was. So if I'm someone who wants to stalk him, or I'm just someone who wants to get his autograph, I could go on here, download this picture, and find out what his car looks like, the exact geolocation where his car is within 3 feet, because he was probably standing 3 feet away taking the picture. And I know what time of day he was going to take because all that's built into the picture file. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. And this is called metadata. And the full article is down here at the bottom. You can read the whole story where the military was talking about it. Here's another one. Someone was at Golden Gate Park. They saw a lady taking a picture with her cell phone. They looked at the time. They knew the approximate GPS coordinates because they turned on the GPS on their phone, saw what the GPS coordinates were, where she stood. They went online and they did a search for the GPS coordinates of that picture because they figured, well, she'll probably upload it to Picasa or Flickr. They did a quick Google search to see if that picture came up for that particular time at that particular geolocation. Oh, guess what? It did. Then what they did is said, oh, here's some information about her camera. Let's tie this in and see if I can find more pictures she posted. Well, they did. After they did this search, they looked at the photo stream, found her other pictures, which they found a cluster of images, which showed her inside of her apartment. It showed her bedroom, her bathroom, her kitchen, which was, according to the person, and again, there's the article here, the person said her kitchen was kind of dirty. So, I mean, he even gave comments on her kitchen. So all of this stuff because of his geo-coordinates, so he knows exactly where she lives, just because of the geo-tagging that's automatically built into these pictures. How do I get rid of this? The answer is this will help. This won't fix it, but this will help. Right here you can go into, if you're an iPhone person, you can go into location services and turn it off. If you're someone who is more enlightened and like Android, can you tell which one I like? You can go into your use GPS satellites and turn it off. So, okay, this is my personal website. And by the way, my PowerPoint, all the files that I'm referencing is right here on my personal website. If you are running filtering software at your house, it may get blocked because I do a lot of security training on here. Another word for security training is hacking. I'm actually going out in July, taking one of my workers, and we're doing a full-day hacking lab for the State Department. So when we go out and do that, I've got a lot of hacking tutorial videos step-by-step on here for the State Department to make it easier for some of them to do. So it may get flagged as a hacking site, just so you're aware. It's not because it's going to hack your computer. It's just because I teach people how to do that and then how to fix those hacks. So security is something that I kind of play around with quite a bit. On my website, okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a cropped image. I'm going to show you this picture. And in the background, you're seeing a rather large thumbnail of it, is a friend of ours, little girl. and my wife. This picture is cropped. If you go look at this picture on my computer, you'll see this exact picture. You're seeing a thumbnail of that. And you're saying, well, okay, I've got a picture, I'm going to want to post this on the internet, but I don't want people to know about this, or I don't really want to show them this. So I crop the picture and I post it. They can't ever see that, right? Wrong. And I'm going to show it to you here really quickly. Right here is a site, and this is linked on my PowerPoint. I'm going to go locate a file. You're going to be amazed what you can find out about this file. Oh, look at this. I can see my wife. She wasn't in the thumbnail image on my computer. But if you go look at this, it's all built into what's called metadata. Metadata is hidden information that's stored. Every time you make a Word document, every time you take a photo, every time you use PowerPoint, Adobe, basically what it does is it puts in hidden information, what computer accessed it, what computer saved it, what computer made it. They basically pull information from your local computer, from your camera device. I'm going to show you some of the information that's in this picture. First of all, this is telling you that this is a Canon Digital Rebel, and this is just a thumbnail image. I mean, this is a partial picture. It's telling me what, camera took this picture. So I know exactly what camera took this picture. I know whether the auto flash, did it fire? It did. I'm seeing all types of information about this picture. Its size, but wait, there's so much more in here. So much fun. And that's the actual picture. Like I said before, you couldn't see my wife in the picture. You can see the quilt she made for me. Really pretty quilt. Our son and a friend of ours, actually, their little girl. JC's little girl. She's a great kid. Well, down here, you can see that I edited this photo in a software called Paint.net. It's free software. It's like Photoshop. It's awesome software. It does not run on Mac. It does run on PC, unless you run it inside Parallels or something. But look at all this information. It's telling me everything about this camera, including, if I come on down, oh, right here. What's it got for serial number? It's pulling the serial number of the camera that took the picture. Now, if my friends JC and Lori had registered their camera back with Canon, it would tell you that this was JC and Lori's camera. It would actually give you their name. So you can pull all this information from a photograph. Let me show you one more. And there's date and time, everything, where it was taken. I'm going to show you one more. And this one's actually coming from Brian's camera. Here's, Brian, you renamed this photo before you emailed it to me, didn't you?
No, that's the base name.
That's the base name? Okay. Brian sent me this photo from their New England trip, and we're going to see what information we found out from his camera. This one's even more fun. Okay, first it's going to tell you that this was taken from his iPhone. It's going to give you the auto definition. Oh, look at this. It's going to give you the Google map. I can click on the map and see that the person who was taking this picture was actually standing out in the road, not on the sidewalk, when they were taking a picture of Brian and his friend and a police officer. I mean, I've got everything on this photo, including latitude and longitude of when this photo was taken. And all he did was email me this photo. So this is the photo. Here is the map. They're on West 47th Street in New York City. And I can zoom in and go to Street View and actually see exactly where this picture was taken. And that's all hidden data that's inside of a document, inside of his iPhone camera, because of the geolocations. You can turn this off for the most part. And on my website, if you have something besides an Android or an iPhone, I have a document I saved in there for several other phones, including Palm devices, iPads, iPhones, iTouches. A lot of these type of things also all put GPS coordinates in there. So disabled geotagging. Most smart tablets also have this information in them. And again, there's more information about this on my website, including a step-by-step picture and how to disable GPS settings on most phones. We were looking at the metadata. On my website, I've got some of the software. Again, metadata is the file, the information that's saved on Word documents, pictures. This right here is a piece of software. It's a JPEG or PNG, which is a file type, where you can actually strip out all that metadata. There's also a faster way, right? When Brian sent me this picture as an MMS file, it stripped all that information out. It stripped out the geotag. So it didn't have his location and stuff. It also sent me a much smaller resolution picture. If I want the full resolution picture, then I'm getting all of this metadata hidden underneath the file. So if you just send it as a text, and he texted it to my email, then all this data was stripped out. But if he actually emailed me the photo, I had the full geolocation of the data. I won't promise that'll always work, but in our test, it was working. This is software. It's on my website. You can download it. It is free software because, as my wife will tell you, I'm cheap, and I like to do things free as much as possible. So this is software that will scrub out the metadata. The doc scrubber does specifically Word documents, PowerPoints, if you don't want all information tied back to a specific computer. And now we're going to do Telespoof. When I've done presentations, and I've done presentations like this for years, it actually started about 8 years ago, a year after my first daughter passed away. After going through that experience, I got a different appreciation for defending young people. Something I pray you never have to go through. But after I went through that experience, the Lord really put on my heart that, hey, you know all this stuff about security. What are you doing for me and what are you doing for someone else besides just, what you're doing for your job? And I thought, okay, I can talk about this. I can do this. So I've done that, and part of what as I've gone through this, I used a program. It was called Spoof Card. You can also use Telespoof, which I'm going to pull up. Basically, I can call a number, and then I can say what number I'm calling from. Don't raise your hand. But if you're using singular, not Verizon, most of the singular phones don't have a passcode on them because you don't have to. My wife's included. Well, I can go into Telespoof, put in my wife's telephone number, saying I want to call her number. Then I can say I'm calling from her number. What does it do? It automatically goes into her voicemail, and I can start listening to her voicemail without installing any software on her computer or on her phone. How do you solve it? You put a PIN. You put a random set of numbers that you can, kind of like don't make it the same as your bank PIN, please. Because none of the phone companies have the ability to block it after multiple times. So I can keep guessing and keep guessing and keep guessing as much as I want. So let's look at Telespoof here for just a second. What I'm doing here, and this is a website, this gives you an example, this is called Telespoof. What I'm doing is I'm going to say your phone number, and then I'm going to say the number I'm going to call. This is the number I want to call. Then I can come down here to the next screen, and by the way, this is a free thing. This isn't the Spoof Card. Spoof Card you actually have to pay for. Spoof Card you pay for so many minutes. Spoof Card has more options. I can go inside Spoof Card and change my voice from male to female. I can go in there, record our cell phone conversation so I can play it back. So there's a lot more features inside Spoof Card than what Telespoof has on their free side. Then I can say, what number do you want to display on the caller's number? So I can call you, and if I do a little bit of searching online, I can find your child or your spouse's number, and I can say I'm calling from their phone. I can change who I'm calling from. Or I can come in here, depending upon your phone, and I can put the same number back in here, and if you don't have a passcode on your voicemail, I'm now listening to your voicemails without installing any software on your cell phone. It's that easy. And there's all kinds of step-by-step videos on YouTube on how to do this if this is just too hard. And you can go back and play it anytime you want to. Does this make sense? Put a passcode. They actually recommend that you put a passcode and that you change it relatively frequently. Because, pardon? On your voicemail. Yes, ma'am. Because if you don't, someone can get into your voicemail. Depending upon your service, you need to call and see if you can, call the company, find out, listen to your voicemail, go under your options, and set a passcode on your voicemail options. It's a pain, but there's a trade-off. you might say, I don't have any voicemail. I don't care if somebody listens to it. That's, again, it's always a risk factor versus, what makes it important to you in life. My voicemails, if they want to listen to all the ones I've saved of my little girl leaving me messages saying, Papa, are you coming home? Or what are we doing for lunch? Or, I love you, good night, when I've been out on the road, they can listen to them.
Is that also, normally if I don't want to save or hear a voicemail again, I usually go ahead and delete it unless it has pertinent information in it. Now, something like that, would that be able to still access those deleted voicemails?
Okay, his question is, can it actually access voicemails that have been deleted? And my wonderful answer of maybe. It depends upon who your cell phone carrier is. Some cell phone carriers will let you go back and retrieve deleted voicemails. And if they will, then yes, they can get into those. If yours doesn't, then no, you won't be able to get it, and nobody else will be able to get it unless they've got specific clearance from the government, then they can still probably go in and get it. Because nothing's really ever deleted, usually permanently. There's one of the funds that we've done before. We always joke and we call it our donut fund. Someone comes in from the yearbook and saying, we accidentally formatted the card that had all the pictures from junior, senior banquet. What are we going to do? And we say, it's going to take us a long time. Go get some donuts, come back in about 30 minutes, we'll have it taken care of. When we go back, I have software on my computer, it takes all of 10 seconds. Even though the card's been formatted, I can restore all those pictures. They come back in half an hour, they're excited, they give us donuts or M&Ms, and my kids are excited, and everyone's happy. But it really only took us 10 seconds. So even if something's deleted, you can still get to it. Here's some more websites. Like I said, I've used Spoof Card a lot, and there's Slide Dial. There's multiple spoof dialing places where you can put in someone's phone number, change the phone number, change your voice, record the message. This has been out for, like I said, 7 years, at least 8 years. It's been around. Let's look at sexting just a little bit. 22% of girls and 18% of boys have electronically sent or posted nude or semi-nude photos via cell phone. That, to me, is a very scary statistic. And unfortunately, it is happening. 1/3 of boys and 3/4 of girls have had a nude or semi-nude picture sent to them. So, 1/4, excuse me, 1/3 or 1/4. Thank you. 40% have been posting sexually suggestive messages. And 1/2 have received a sexually suggestive text message. So this is something that has become a part of the society that we need to make sure we're helping, protecting our young people, and also making sure that they know that this is something they should not do, and if they get something, they need to let us know. I would always tell you to delete, but I would also caution you to be very careful what you do with anything. Because if you're not, then you just, depending on if the child's a minor, you just committed a felony offense. A police officer in Boston was arrested because he made copies of child pornography and put it onto a jump drive to take it in the police station because he was trying to collect evidence. And they said, no, you just distributed it. He eventually got off, but it was rather finagled. You be very careful with this stuff. Right here, straight up from the top, I have Verizon as my service provider. I get no endorsement for them. I don't really care one way or another, but this was done in 2010. It's the most recent survey that's been done. And if you come across here, you'll see Verizon has more security features than anybody else. Sprint is real close. I think Verizon has like 1 or 2 more. AT&T is not quite as close. But Verizon has the most, and they can block text messages and all that kind of stuff. I just want you to see that. This is on my website. You can download this as a PDF, and you can look and see exactly what security features are available to you for your phone and what's available for the young people. You can say no text messages after a certain hour at night. You'd be amazed how often young people text all through the night. And I mean all through the night. First thing you need to do, if you're getting inappropriate or your child is or a young person is, you need to block or ban the bullying from contacting your child, which if you have Verizon, you can block numbers. There are several cell phones that are blocked from sending text messages to our students at GCA. They won't come into our email. I just block them because they've sent stuff that's horrible. So the kids won't ever get, even if it's something nice. Once you start sending nasty stuff to my students, I block you. No questions asked. The next thing is have the child set up a new account. And the last thing is save stuff in case you have to report. And you hope you don't have to, but you need to report if something is happening to your young person or young person you know. Ever been tased by a taser? This is one where kids really don't like Mr. Staats. I like taser. And I'm not talking about lighting somebody up with a gun. I'm talking about they have a cell phone software package. Oh, they can lock the cell phone. You basically install this device in the kid's car. 50% of kids have admitted that they've ridden in a car where someone was texting while they were driving. And even Mythbusters did one on drunk driving versus texting while you're driving. And their studies showed it was safer to be drunk and behind the wheel than text and behind the wheel. And I would love to tell you I have no personal experience, but I had a head-on collision because I was reaching over to turn off the car radio and answer the phone when one of my workers was calling, and I swerved out of my lane and went head-on with another Camry. And I had a nice imprint of my rear view mirror in my head, and it killed all the skin, and kids were taking pictures of my forehead because you could almost read the lettering on my rear view mirror on my forehead. And that's probably where my brain damage came from. But anyways, I'm feeling better now. That it's real. It happens. So one of the things that they have with this right here, as soon as the kid puts the key in the car and turns the car on, it automatically locks down their cell phone. So they can't text. They can't call. They can only call 911, and they can only receive a call from who you allow, if anybody. So this is one of the products. They also have serious collision detection. If the car receives a 3G impact or more, it'll automatically call you. It has real-time GPS tracking, which gives you the ability to tell if your kid is speeding. I'm glad my parents didn't have this. I would have been in trouble. But it's out there, so you can do this as parents now. I probably should have been in trouble. And there's also Geofences. And by the way, Verizon, AT&T, a lot of them can let you set boundaries where when the kid's cell phone goes out of a certain area, you get a text message. So if they're leaving the county and you know they shouldn't be leaving the county, you can be aware of that. Any inbound cell call, text message, photograph, anything that comes into the phone, if you want to with Taser, you have the ability of having it sent to your phone first and you approve it. Anything going out from your child's phone, you have the ability to sit there and approve it before it goes out. Now, I hope you don't ever have to do this, because if you've got this kind of an issue, you have a bigger issue on your hands. This is if there's a problem. Would I go to this level? I might put on the cell phone blocking when they're driving, because that'll help me sleep better. But I doubt that I'm going to be doing every single text message my daughter or son send out. Excuse me, I won't promise I won't, but I hope I don't have to. There's more information on this right here from this website. This is a geek alert. We're almost done. I appreciate your time. But this right here is going to be a little bit geeky. We've talked about a lot of security stuff. How do you protect your privacy? We've talked a little bit about the mobile technologies, and there's a lot of software out there. But this right here is for your home computer. There are software you can install into Firefox, Safari, like I said, whether it's PC or Mac, it doesn't matter. These are extensions that basically try and scrub and hide your identity while you're online. And this right here is Ghostry, is one of the pieces of software that you can install. There's also Web Browser, which Trace Eraser, which provides an easy way to clear your internet history, your cookies. These are all files that are hidden on your computer that someone can then track and see where you're going online. I have celiac disease, so I have to eat gluten-free food. And if you get on my computer and you do a Google search, you're going to see all kinds of pop-ups for gluten-free food and gluten-free restaurants. Because I'm not worried on one of my computers, my work computer, I don't care if they track that. You know, that's just not an important thing to me in my life. But if you don't want to be profiled, because it's completely profiled. And oh yes, by the way, my Kroger card that we have doesn't have my name on it. I got it sent to my work address with a bogus telephone number. So everything I buy at Kroger is not being tagged back to me. It's being tagged back to somebody else. It's actually it's a real house number in Calhoun, because I've called it before. So all that information's there. There's Ad Blocker, there's CyberGhost, which is basically a secure access. And then there's iPhone Tracker, which is for the Macintosh operating system. And it records your movements. So you can record cell phones, you can record tracking stuff. There are, in addition to the Taser, there's Flex Spy, there's Mobile Spy. There are several software packages, and I'm not going to spend the time to go through these, because I want to give you guys, but basically, like I said, if you install the software on someone's phone, you can turn on their microphone, you can geo-trace them, you can geo-track them. Again, if you go to my website, you can download all of this and get more of this information. My website is es-es.net, the number 2.html. You can download this PowerPoint. You can download everything else that we talked about, including the research that's been done on the longitudinal study as far as depression and media exposure. All of that information is on there. Thank you very much.